and let's talk. What we'll do is we'll go between the two. Right, let's just get out the way now. How the fuck, for real, Key-Ray, how is it possible that Rogue is this bad? Because you know what I mean? Like, this is one of the teams where I do just keep looking at the roster like, fuck, shouldn't they even eventually trip over and win a game? Like, it's not even a terrible roster, but like the actual like synergies are just not existing, mate. Like, this actually might be the worst team. That's the craziest thing, isn't it? It might actually be the worst team in LEC, even though that's Larson on it, which is inexplicable.
Well, there's a couple of like factors. First of all, like solo carrying from like mid right now, basically like impossible, and also like playing out like mid 2v2 like win conditions, not so much impossible, but you're not going to do it that often either. And if you are going to do it, you have to have a matchup in which it's enabled in. Also, doesn't help for Rogue that Azir's banned, so you know, like just a little bit of context there.
Sure,
but. Yeah, it wasn't like there was like millions of like carry Azir games, but it does affect the results somewhat. I am very like kind of somewhat soft on rookies, but there's a lot of veterans on this team. Finn, Larson, Comp, somewhat on Markun, right? But there's some shockers from like Zolas, like. And just in terms of like cleaning up the map and doing basic League of Legends stuff, there's like a whole game. I brought this up on EuroLeague. There's a whole game section where he goes topside and doesn't actually cross river for 8 minutes, and doesn't clear wards on the other side of the map. Now, in the modern conception of League of Legends, you go all the way back to like season like 6 and 5, and that would have been like a crazy concept then. And we're now in like 2024. If that's happening, like game, you're never going to win games. Yeah, even if he did clear those wards. They were against Fnatic, I believe, so they probably were going to lose the game anyway. But it just makes it so much harder to play out the game. Finn has never ever been basically like a great carry player in his entire life, and as such, like you're basically playing like some sort of like mid to bot team. But your bot lane isn't like one of the best bot lanes in EU anymore, and your bot lane with jungler just don't understand. Like they have basically turned Markun into a maligned version of like Malrang. But I don't understand how that happens because, for example, one of the things when Markun was an SK, he used to like skip camps to accelerate like Irrelevant, to do like you skip a camp, get bot quicker, and you play for like his lanes. Like Markun really liked playing for lanes. He liked doing it on XL as well, right? But when he's like playing for like his lanes now, some of them aren't even in like winning positions, or like his bot lane doesn't manage their well, and it's just they look like they have. So I don't even want to say like no systems, but no like consideration of how when they go in with the champions that they've picked, how they're actually going to win the game. And so it's very, very directionless. Like they win a team fight against Fnatic, and it's basically Larson hits 4 people with 4 spells, and he blows up like 3 people instantly. I was like, the League of Legends has moved so far beyond that that's not a win condition, and they still lost that game. Like. Because eventually Fnatic just reset, set up the map better, and didn't let that mistake happen again. So I really don't know where this team can kind of go from here. You know, like I know you're like a big fan of like the coaching staff on the team. I don't know like anything about them, and it could just be the same players as well. But it looks like someone needs to attempt to give this team like a direction in terms of how to win games from even just take like the first 10 minutes of the game where like most coaches report that they have the most influence on. That's what all coaches come out and say. Like I can control what my team does like for like the first 10 minutes, but after that it becomes a lot harder, right? The first 10 minutes of Rogue might be some like the worst first 10 minutes of like any LEC team, where it is literally make no plays, and then if they make any play, it's just like, wow, that was the worst possible play. Like how did you ever think that play was ever going to be good? So it's really, really worrying. Don't know where like they go. I think it was actually, unless you just kind of luck out and people like mature and take control of it, it would need to be personnel change. But I'm majorly concerned for them because I was really surprised a team could have these players on it and be this bad.
I mean, one of the things that I was worried about when I even saw this lineup announced, even before they swapped to Finn, is when I look at these players on paper. Right, I've heard from, I think Trimby said that like Larson's quite vocal about like asking for gangster mid and stuff. But aside from that, traditionally you don't have your mid lane to be the shot caller. Like, bro, unless Markун's some like secret, who the fuck's doing it in this team? Like, there's nothing, like, there's no universe. Like, The Zoli's guy isn't. He's brand new and he's French, guys. The fucking Marcoon himself is not even that experienced. He's only been in the league a few years. And quite frankly, on his other teams, I'm guessing Nuke Duck shot called or, other
Nuke
fucking
Duck
players like that.
Nuke Duck told me when I spoke to him that him and Marcoon designed XL's early games with the coaching staffs, right? So Marcoon did have a say in like designing early games with like Nuke Duck. So maybe it's the fact that like Marcoon doesn't have someone to bounce off of, and he like in those old teams he wasn't an executive making executive decisions. He was like proposing ideas to Nuke Duck, and then Nuke Duck was going yes or like no. And now he's not got that. But obviously I don't know the insides of Rogue, and that was just something Nuke Duck told me when I spoke to him when he was on XL. So I'm not even like that sure. And also I think with Certus, when I spoke to Certus as well, actually, he said that like him and like Marcoon basically when they were playing against Rogue in the BO3s, they basically like designed like the comp about basically like preying on like Larsen's like tendencies. And it was like him and Marcoon played the jungle 2v1 because they knew Malrang was going to always play for bot lane. So like I've heard like he does plan stuff from two of his past mid laners, and that's why I just can't believe it's this bad. Like I'm just stunned at how shockingly terrible it is.
Because the thing I can't understand is this does just look like a team that, like, you could believe this team have no mics. You know what I mean? Like, bro, the game they had against fucking BDS, where it's like, you have every possible advantage. Like, what are you waiting for? Like, if you're actually good, don't you just win the game now? But they just don't, they genuinely look like a solo queue team that doesn't know what they're doing. Like, it doesn't matter what lead you get, it doesn't matter what champion you have, it doesn't matter how much gold you have. Like, this is a fucking whack team. This is just a whack team. And the worst thing about it is, like, when you say that, here's the thing, I was never like a massive fan of Freddy122, the coach stuff. It's more like this. I just think it's insane that with the teams they had when they were always like first place in the regular split and winning like 13, 14 games, the joke is, mate, if any Fnatic team had ever had that roster of players, they'd be voted like coaching staff of the century, mate. What are you talking about? Like, they would, remember, Rogue would literally take, they were ever taking big name players from better teams. They were always taking worse players or players who've never been in LEC and then going to the very top of the LEC. So that tells me you're doing something. But I do think, by the way, that coaches in league, it's a bit like in football, mate. If even in fucking football, a game that's been around for hundreds of years and they're putting insane tens of hundreds of millions of dollars in and coaching staffs that have all these, if even they have teams where like the greatest managers ever just have the wrong lineup and they're not good, then in league there's no way there's, I don't care, guys. Even when I tell you Dylan Falco's the best coach, well, spoiler, I've seen Dylan Falco be on lineups where it didn't work, or maybe the players, spoiler, maybe you'll find out some of them could gatekeep angles of his skill set, maybe they didn't help him in draft, or they wouldn't play something he wanted. So it doesn't, there's no God coach. But I do think the sad thing in this particular case is, this is where I feel like the GM did fuck Rogue, mate. Because if you think of the two styles that worked for Rogue, it went like this. You had the era when they were quite inexperienced, and so quite frankly, I always thought, no one else seemed to pick up on this, I always thought they were the team that listened to LS's logic and was sort of like, right, well, if you're not actually quite as good, then if you can safely lane on these scaling picks, you eventually just win the game without doing anything. Literally, by the way, what LS has preached for years, but every ignorant person just goes, he doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's a Korean, well, I guess in their case, they don't call him a fellatio enthusiast because that'd be a bit too on the nose, wouldn't it? So what I would say is they basically used to use that. And then the other one obviously was, then when they had like just really good players, they used to just play for early game. They obviously had a priority in every lane they could. And then they just hoped beyond that, like Malrang doing crazy moves like that. My logic was, the rest of the team was still that passive team, but Malrang was just such a maniac, they thought it like balanced out, which it sort of did, if you know what I mean. It didn't really, like, it wasn't like an objectively good plan, but it did in like the same ways you can have positive inters, you know, that concept. Like, I do think Dom was onto something there. Like, you can have a positive inter where they are inting, they are doing the wrong player, but if you put them with the right players, it becomes like an opportunity for the right player to come out of it, like a million Hylissang flanks that we can all think of, where, as you see, on the wrong team, it looks shit, and on the right team, they win the game off it. So my problem is that is like in the modern day, they don't have the players. They just, here's what's mad. They have players that like have mechanics, but they're not even good in lane necessarily now, which is mind blowing. The Finn one, I'll never understand, because the only reason to ever get Shigenda was to be like slightly above average in lane, and that was it, and to play carry champ. So they actually now treated it like, let's get Finn instead, a worse version of that player with more experience and who was way less likely to develop. That one blows my mind. So the real problem is, this is why I put it all on the GMing, because the GM really has like step by step taken you from an all LEC roster to what we have now, which is a bunch of players where some of these players probably won't be in LEC in 2 years at this point in time. You know what I mean? Like Larsen probably will be, maybe Marcoon will be, I don't know about the others. Maybe Comp can get a spot. The others might never play again. This might be the end for them.
the Trimby Advian trade will go down in like
Oh, it's terrible,
Western
isn't it?
League as one of the worst Western trades, and like.
I mean, the joke is they didn't even keep Advian. That's the maddest part.
Yeah,
of it,
like
isn't
that,
it?
and that's
I know.
and it might have been like it might be like the perks thing, where it's like any human being that isn't Trimby, can we get them? But now you've seen the repercussions of that. Well, you got any human being that wasn't Trimby, and now you are dog shit. The other thing you've kind of got to like consider here is, and this is like my great concern, which is why I wish I could have grabbed like Larson by his ears, because me and you have watched esports for a long time. Your window to win don't always come back. Larson looks like when I was talking about some Dota players, it looks like the setting sun, unless he can get his arse off of that team in some way, or they can get a winning squad round them, because like at the end of the day, you're in the practical sense, unless G2 like blows themselves up, even if you got like a good squad around yourself as Larson, you would be guaranteed to win. There's still other great teams, and you've not even got that. You're so far at the back of the queue of being anywhere near winning the LEC that is absolutely bonkers. And so you're just wasting your time. You're wasting years of your career, which you do not have. There's nothing to say Larson's always going to be Larson.
Oh no,
like I don't think Larson's actually been anywhere near as good a player this year. He's still skilled. He's still like good at the things that he's good at, but he's nowhere near the carry player that he was even last year. So you've got to put that into consideration. The only thing that I thought that was possibly going to be quite interesting was that was actually the guy that taught Freddie to play League. They got N-rated, who was like known for being like one of the smartest guys in Europe for many years. So he came into coaching for the team, and I don't know. It's really hard to tell. I can only point to like people and basically what they're doing, and like for example, I don't think Finn's great, but there are actual game like sections where I think Finn is doing something really, really good, and his team sells him down like a river, and he dies because his like team just won't do like anything. Like they have like a dragon set up. Zolas goes in, they hook the target, they damages the target, and everyone walks back out of the dragon pit into river, and then Finn's on a flank and dies. And it's just like, what was the plan there? Like, what was the actual plan? You even hooked the target and nobody used any spells. Like, why even show up to like the dragon? You're basically just being there to make sure that, like, to watch it die. You just be like, yes, it died. So they're very, very frustrating. I don't even like to identify too much of the headspace of why so, because there's just so much wrong from just start to finish that I'd be like, you need to, at a foundation level, there's just nothing there. It's just complete free fall right now, but anyway.
Well, the thing is, they're a shit team anyway, so we'll move on. But I've got a couple of last points, and then we'll just go to the other team. So one thing to say is this as well. This is also the problem, though, Kiri. I had to learn this a lot over the years. There's a big difference between being really knowledgeable about the game and being a really good coach. I mean, the joke is, if you're actually an amazing coach, it's why I say I don't care. Even though I know he does know about draft and stuff, I don't care what Youngbuck knows, because just the things I've heard of the stories of how he actually coached people were fucking straight fire. Like, they were literally like understanding how to work with men and how to resolve problems and how to like play off dynamics within teams and tension and things. But so basically the other problem you have is this. I think N-Rated's one of the smartest people to ever play League of Legends, but I don't know what he's like as a coach, obviously. Like, I can tell you right now, sometimes you get very, very smart coaches that have two problems. One is, essentially, they're just like one of those college university professors that does a lecture, and it might all be straight fire, but they're just droning on and you tune out. Like what happens is sometimes in VOD review, because they are the guy who knows exactly what's wrong, they're just too didactically explaining everything. And now what you would do is this, remember, you would just watch the sideline. It's like, no, there's some coaches out there, just asking questions might help there. What could we have done? What should you do? Sometimes that's a better method to get you to engage with the learning. And then the other thing to say as well is on the Marcoon one, I'm just going to put this out there as food for thought for a future episode. My problem with Marcoon, if people have noticed, is I've never been all in. Have you noticed that? Like when he was on XL the first time, Dom used to go fucking ham on this guy. The reason I've never gone all in is because it's funny this guy was on XL, because he's always given me the same fucking vibe as Patrick, which is they are both, most of the time, above average at their role, but I have never bought that they ever entered like, I'm the best player at my role, or I'm elite at that. They've always been on that fringe. And I'll tell you the reason why I do feel like what I've said is justifiably being borne out. Look look at their teams. Isn't that what happens to all of their teams? They get to that fringe part where they are, and then they're not actually the best, so they don't go to the top. So I'll just say that. It's why I don't mind any of these moves with Mark Hoodie, the teams to be in the last few years. I think those are actually teams where it was worth a gamble. The difference is, though, I wouldn't have ever put him into a Fnatic or something like that. You know, I think he should be more around the sort of 4th to 5th type.
See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.